I want them to be able to see that other people are wrestling with the problem and have solutions and are prepared as to share that. One of the things that impressed me greatly when I joined the retail industry, which is in the mid-80s, I joined a life insurance company in Melbourne, and I was amazed about the openness, shared knowledge that existed within the life industry. That was quite different from when I went into a wealth management, an investment house, where everything was a secret, and we certainly didn't want to share with anybody what we were doing. And I think it's back to where I started with that notion that none of us are capable of knowing everything, but we have a responsibility to each other and to share what we've learnt. Look, I've been in financial services now for 50 years, and it seemed to me that what we see now is regulators around the world saying what you've been doing isn't good enough, and putting all of the responsibility back to the issuers of products and the salesmen of products. And what's very clear is that informed consent and transparency is the way you mitigate those oppressions from the regulator. If you're reliant on getting prescriptive rules, you'll always be caught. But if your approach is to share and be open with clients about any conflicts of interest that you have, the fees that you're charging, and the risks the clients are taking on, then the outcome is the client has an opportunity to make an informed decision. They can make use of their advisor to help them prioritise their goals and aspirations against the products that they're taking on and the risks they're taking on. And you have a much better way of dealing with the challenges we currently have of engendering trust. Intuitively, I think they do, but practically, I don't think they understand very much at all. We see it in the algorithms used in robo-advice, for instance. There's an attempt to very quickly match off risk tolerance, risk required, and risk capacity, the three fundamental components of a risk profile, in a very mechanical way. And of course, the world isn't like that. Individuals have competing goals. Their preferences for risk can be quite different from their needs for risk or the risks they can afford to take. So the trick in this is a recognition that it's never going to be a formula that's automatically replicable for every client. Every client will be unique, but the formula you apply will enable them to express their particular circumstances and needs to the outcome and share that with the advisors. It's just an inevitability. I've been doing this for, seems, most of my adult life. And more regularly I'm hearing commentators and consulting firms and software houses and advisory businesses and fund managers have arrived at the same point, that if you provide a service that meets the needs of a client, they'll be happy. What we've lost is trust along the way, and what we need to be able to do is have processes that enable people to feel comfortable that the recommendations are for them and not for the advisor or the institution that they're working with. They've got to feel comfortable that it's about them. Well, one of the issues around planning is you actually have to sit with clients and look at the consequences of alternate behaviour, and they're quite different. So let me give you an example. When you've got a relatively small amount of money, chasing additional performance won't give you as much return as saving a little more or working a little longer. But it's quite different when you've got a fair chunk of money. Getting an additional 1% per annum return can be hugely different. That's the secret of not only initial suitability but ongoing suitability, is that you're able to have an ongoing dialogue with a client, listening to them and helping them articulate what it is that's important to them and giving them the greatest likelihood of your advice with their decision making, giving them the best match of assets to liabilities as they fall due. Our relationship is to show that we've listened to them, we've given them a recommendation that meets their need. That's the initial suitability. But clearly, people get older, they degenerate, they regenerate, they get educated, they inherit, they get ill, they change jobs, their portfolio changes structure. That's ongoing and needs to be taken into account. So the opportunity is to provide an environment, a dashboard, if you will, that says, not only did we make sure that this recommendation was suitable for your needs, but ongoing, we're looking at it. We're using technology predominantly to help us do that, but we're able to put up warnings when things are beginning to drift outside our original intentions. If you proceed this way, your daughter will not be able to inherit as you would have hoped. If you proceed this way, you may need to work an extra couple of years. You've stopped paying that insurance. You've now taken on that liability yourself. Are you comfortable that it wasn't just an administrative problem, but that's a personal risk that you and your family have taken on because you're no longer insured? That's ongoing suitability, and that comes from an integration with all of your financial matters into a comprehensive data management framework, which will hopefully, if it's well structured, provide you with timely warnings of when you're coming and drifting away from your original goals. I'm empathetic but frustrated by regulators that refuse to provide, for instance, clear sight of what's an appropriate due diligence on tools, as an example. So we've only seen out of the UK regulator a view that all tools you use have to be subject to a process where you understand their strengths and weaknesses and mitigate against those weaknesses in the way you give advice. I haven't seen that detailed recommendation in any other environment. So you need to have a regulator that understands planning, understands the trade-offs. When I talk to the regulators around the world, my conversations are often quite informal, but I rarely walk away with a notion that the regulators got it. I think it's still at the highly prescriptive level, and there's no reinforcement through the educational process. So it's pretty much been left to advisors and their firms to apply their professional judgment. And professional judgment in a vacuum isn't necessarily going to find the right way to do things, and in a very commercial world, if they're not examples people can see, if they aren't clearly taught and they're left for people to divine, then it leaves things out to imagination and creativity.